previous video, I showed how to use the wireless interface built into a MacBook in order to create your own wireless network so that your devices can share the internet connection on your MacBook, provided it's using internet through one of the devices that connects to the USB port. A lot of times, though, you get free wireless at campgrounds. So it'd be nice to still be able to share all of your devices. The advantage to using the MacBook in the earlier example was that you didn't need any additional hardware other than what you use for your internet device, in my case an iPhone or a Verizon MiFi. So if you want to be able, though, to share an internet connection, a wireless internet connection at a campground with all of your devices, you do need a piece of equipment. And there's some really great ones out there, but they're expensive, a couple $100 at the minimum, $500 or $600 at the other end. So, being on a limited budget, I like to do things where I can with what I already have. So I have a Netgear internet router that's designed for using like a cable modem or a DSL type of modem to provide wireless internet in a house. And it also has a built-in hub with some Ethernet ports, gigabit Ethernet ports if you want to hardwire something. But I'm going to use that device to share my wireless connection at a campground. So let me explain how this works. First of all, you've got to make sure and be able to connect, of course, wirelessly to the local network. I'm at a KOA in Kingman, Arizona, which has a particularly good Wi-Fi system here. So I'm connected to that and happy with the way it's working. Now I want to be able to share my other devices in the house, and I want it set so that once I've connected those things, I don't ever have to touch them again. I don't have to go change usernames, passwords, any of that kind of stuff in them. So let's look at what's required. In order to talk to a device like a router, you have to be on the same network as it. So let's go look at my system preferences here. These routers come from the factory defaulted to do DHCP, which means that they will hand out an address on their own to any device that's plugged into it. So I plugged my computer into the device, and I've got my Thunderbolt Ethernet. That's what I'm using for my Ethernet connection, and it's defaulted to using DHCP, and sure enough, it has an address, 192.168.1.2, and it tells me the address for the router is 1.1. If this wasn't here, I would hold down the button on the router, reset it to the factory configuration, and see if it didn't give me a proper address. If it didn't, you can look up what the default addresses are and just configure this manually. Okay? In this case, I'm going to leave it for the moment DHCP, and we're going to see if we can get to that machine okay. And lo and behold, it pops up. Do you want the Netgear Genie to help? No, I don't. I like to think I know what I'm doing, and I'll probably prove myself wrong. The default username and password on this is admin and password. So with that, we're in to configure this. Step one, so many devices use that 192.168 address range. We're going to go in and we're going to go to the advanced. We're going to go to the setup, and let's start with wireless. Let's go ahead and do what we can here. Enable SSID is checked. That means that the name is going to show up as a network you can select from when you're looking to hook up wirelessly. I like to use names that tell me which speed of the network it is I'm hooking up to. So I'm going to put GG24 for the 2.4 gigahertz and GG50 for the 5 gigahertz network. I'm going to leave their default passphrase. These are usually found on stickers on the back of the modem. Then we're going to go to, I'm going to apply this. And then we're going to go do the LAN setup. And the LAN setup is somewhat critical on this. We don't want this thing doing any routing or handing out IP addresses. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to dumb this down to be just a wireless hub. So we have the network wireless setup to be able to connect to. Now let's go look at the LAN setup. We want to make sure and turn off use router as a DHCP server. And as I mentioned before, I'm not a fan of, let me shrink this window down a little bit. I'm not a fan of the default addresses that these things come with. So step one, let's turn off the DHCP server and apply that. And if it disconnects us from the network, we may have to reconfigure our interface to be hardwired, hard-coded, static on the address, since we're not using the dynamic host configuration protocol built into this. So we're going to do a couple of things here. So first of all, we turned off DHCP, and now I'm going to change that stupid default address. I don't like that. So it's just a preference of mine. It may not interfere with anything that you're doing on your end. You can leave it set to the way it is, but I prefer to change mine. And we'll see if this thing comes back to life here for us. There we go. All right, so here's the deal though. As soon as I change this address, we're not going to be able to talk to this device anymore, right? So we're going to change this to something that I know won't interfere. And so I'm just going to make it be 50.1. So I'm giving this a new address. And I'm going to apply it. Make sure this is unchecked. Use router, make sure that's unchecked. I'm going to apply this. So since it's 50.1, guess what? We're not going to be able to talk to it anymore. So I go to my system preferences, and I'm going to change this to manually. We're going to put in 192.168. We're going to give ourselves an address on that network, 50.2. and 255.255.0. I don't need to put a router in there. We don't care. We're not using this as a router anyway, so we don't really care about that. And what should happen is that magically this will show us as being connected again. As the router comes back to life. Okay, so now we're connected. I have to come back up here though, and I've got to put my new address I gave the router in there, so 50.1. So now we've got this configured to be completely out of the way of any other networking devices that want to default to that. 192.168.2, 192.168.1. Those are such standard networks in use that it's a lot of conflicting stuff. So, all right, what we did, we turned off the DHCP, so this no longer hands out addresses. We set the networks up with our own username and passwords on there, and that's all. At this point, we have kind of a dumb device that our other devices connect to. So now what we need to do is we need to tell the Mac that, hey, I want you to route. I want you to be the router for everything that comes in through that Thunderbolt Ethernet port. So let's go do that. We go to the system preferences, and now we're going to go to sharing. And I've got the Thunderbolt Ethernet port selected, and I'm going to say share your connection from Wi-Fi. So my Wi-Fi up here is the Kingman. So I'm going to share the Kingman KOA connection with my other wireless devices. So all I do is come over here and turn it on. Now sometimes, everybody that's been on the road knows sometimes the wireless at the campground either doesn't function or is unusable or there isn't any, in which case I can come up here, and if I'm using my iPhone for internet, I can switch so that now I'm sharing everything coming in through my Ethernet port out through my iPhone internet connection. Or the one I use most often is the Verizon device, because Verizon has very good coverage out west. So now I would have it connected through my USB port, and away I would go. But anyway, for simplicity's sake and for the example here, I'm sharing everything that's coming in through my Thunderbolt Ethernet port, which is where I have the Netgear device connected, through the Wi-Fi, which is connected to the KOA campground. And now I say internet sharing, start, and away we go. At this point, all of my devices that I've previously connected to this router using the SSIDs and the passwords that I have set are connected and able to surf the internet. And because I can just leave them set that way, I can just, anytime that I have that wireless router turned on, even though it's not acting as a router, I'll call it wireless hub for now. Anytime I have that hub on, my devices are connected and they can see one another, they can share files, they can do things like time machine backups, etc. And at the same time get out to the internet, and all I have to do is set my sharing here to use whichever method I'm connected to the internet, share whichever method I'm connected. So that way I'm not having to change my devices. I'm just making one change in my Mac as to which internet connection is active and which one I want to share. Anyway, I hope that's a helpful video on how you can get internet shared inexpensively using leftover, so to speak, devices. Thanks.